just be casual about it. We're here for about this hour to see what we can come up with, to see if we can find any words, tools, advice we can use to to apply in our life. There's this nice that's our motivation, okay? So there's this nice saying in Tibetan. They're so sweet. They say we shouldn't be like the three pots. The first pot we shouldn't be like is the one that's got holes in it. So it goes in one ear and out the other. That's useless. The next pot we shouldn't be like is it shouldn't be upside down because nothing goes in at all. And the third pot shouldn't be shouldn't be dirty. So our mind should be a little bit pure, a little bit open, not sort of full of aversion and annoyance and upset. Otherwise you won't hear a single thing, just pollute everything you hear. So don't be like the three pots. I like that. It's the first time I've ever said it in years, I think. So, okay. But I haven't got a clue to talk about. I'm sure I'll think of something. So I always think of something. But I think I'd like someone to ask a question. What would you like to talk about? What's come up for you? What's something that you'd like to touch on? Please ask me, somebody. I mean, I'm a show off. I'll talk all day.
Then, Robina, I just wanted to remind that we did say at some point that we would do the 4 opponent powers.
I know.
Okay.
I know we did. And we will one day. Unless that's what you want. So someone ask me, what do you want? Or just ask a question. We'll see where the question takes us, isn't it?
I'm sorry, I thought that you were going to talk about being your own psychotherapist.
That's what we call this general series of talks on Sundays.
I see. Wonderful.
So
Okay.
this is the first time you've been here, is it, Joan?
Yeah, I'm a psychotherapist and I'm a meditator, and I was just tickled by the title of your
Oh,
talk.
how sweet. Joan, that's very nice. Well, I think, Joan, we should start off with that. Okay, what does that mean? It's very interesting. It's kind of quoting one of my teachers. And, because often I think as Buddhists, we often don't think that Buddha's expertise is the mind. We think it's always religion, meditate, spacey, wacy, hippie, trippy, I mean, you understand. And so one of our teachers, he said, being a Buddhist, you're actually learning to be your own therapist, learning to be your own psychologist. And so, I mean, let's talk about that. What does it mean? What does that mean? It's very interesting because just recently, yesterday, the last couple of days, there's been a big conference in Australia, and it's the happiness and its causes, and it's run by the director of our center in Sydney, Tony. He's been doing it for like 15 years now. He has 2 conferences a year. He's got his own private company, is an events company, and he started doing these conferences, which is his way of raising money to run the center in Sydney. And they've been quite successful. One was happiness and its causes, and one was mind and its potential. So this year it was happiness and its causes, and it was obviously online. They had like 3,000 people. They were very happy with it. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama was one of the speakers. And the thing was, I had one talk and then a workshop. I did a workshop but also I was on a panel. And it was interesting that there were 4 of us, all different people working with the mind, very nice human beings. And what really struck me was this, I'll explain my point. Okay, I'm trying to get to my point. That, there's this, people who are in the helping professions. I mean, you, for example, very well. You're in the helping professions. Like, for example, if you're in a hospital, you're working with people. I mean, you get exhausted. People get exhausted when they help others. They were talking about compassion fatigue, And there was and even more recently before that, a couple of days before that, was this topic is a really major one. And so the talk was people, go out and help, and then you need to have time for yourself. That's how we talk. You got to take care of yourself. You've got to have a rest, you've got to have a massage, you've got to take care of yourself. Otherwise you get burned out. And that makes sense. But the point is, there's a Buddhist approach that's distinctly different from that. And I was saying what I was saying, but it was interpreted as, oh yes, you've got to take care of yourself. But there's more than that. And so let me explain the Buddhist approach. So and this is also in the framework of that saying, I always say this nice analogy that a bird needs 2 wings. It's a perfect way of putting all the work that you do as a Buddhist, So the point is the compassion wing has to be the point. I mean, we all live in this interdependent universe. I mean, this is also taking in the Buddhist teachings about wisdom, about emptiness, about how things are interdependent. And we can see that that's the point. If we reach out to other human beings, if we're kind to others, if we help others, if we see other people's problems, we're very social beings. And we can see very clearly that that's really, if we're all harmonious, because we don't live in isolation, we don't live on an island, we live with other people. So we've always got to be compromising, always got to learn to be patient, always got to learn to be humble, always got to learn to be compassionate and forgiving. This is the compassion wing. And of course, that's the point. I always use the Dalai Lama as an example. If anybody, look at this person for the last 60, in fact, the last 70 years, he actually, 1950 was when the Chinese communists invaded Tibet. And then 1950, so he was already there. They had to hasten his appointment to take over as the leader of Tibet, because always the Dalai Lama, he was both the secular and the religious leader. And he was only 15 at the time, but they figured the times were so terrible that they needed it. So he was appointed at 15 to run the country, you know. So, I mean, that's unbelievable. So that's 70 years ago, 70 years ago. So you could say and anybody who's seen him, anybody who's read about him over the years, you can see he's this happy fellow. He was 15 and now he's 85, okay? 70 or 80, 85, 85, it's 70 years ago. So anyone who's seen him over the years, whether you heard him in 1959, whether you heard him in 1970, whether you heard him in 1982, whether you heard him in 2010, whether you heard him yesterday, the 2 days ago, he gave a talk. He's a happy, funny fellow, speaking in ordinary language, you know? So we love to mystify religious teachers and think they do something secret and holy. Well, no, he's on the case with the compassion wing. He spends his life not just helping Tibetans, but functioning around the world. He never stops, you know. So if you look at, and then you look at his situation, and you see it's pretty dire. More than 1 million, easily more than 1 million, if not close to 2 million of the 6 or 7 million Tibetans have been killed in the last 50 years, 60 years. It continues to happen. They're imprisoned, they're tortured, the country's been completely destroyed, the environment's been completely destroyed. I mean, His Holiness is in tears when he talks about the animals being killed. I mean, they didn't have environmental problems before because they didn't even have a label called environmentalism, because these Tibetans had this massive country, unbelievably rich in resources and natural minerals and animals, but they left it in peace. They weren't greedy. They left the place in peace. So unfortunately, since this new regime has come along in 1959, the place is completely destroyed. The animals destroyed. There's starvation. There's every possible imaginable problem for a country that has happened in the last 40, 50, 60 years, you know. But so if he's the boss of the country, he's like their daddy, then you'd think he'd be somehow exhausted by now. He has never stopped, you know, working diplomatically, spiritually, politically, socially, scientifically. He never gives up. He seems to never give up. But the point is, he doesn't look like sort of grand and noble. Everybody who meets him, they all say he's so down to earth and humble and funny and ordinary, you know. So we've got to, I mean, we should ask the question. We should think, well, I wonder what he does. If you see such an incredible intensity of suffering, we know ourselves, one small thing happens in the world. You get some terrible pain. Your husband leaves you. You get cancer. We are distraught. We are overcome. We can't handle. We can see this. So don't just mystify him and think, oh, that's just the Dalai Lama. If you look at the reality, look at the evidence, you've got to ask the question. And we don't ask like this. We've got to ask, I wonder what he does to be so happy-go-lucky with this intense of experience, unbelievable suffering of his Tibetan people, and the world the way it is. He always seems to be a happy, perky person. But we tend to think, oh, that's just the Dalai Lama. That's really insulting, you know. So what does he do? How come he's so compassionate? How come he's so stable? How come he's so funny and ordinary and never gives up for these 70 years, since he's 15? But, you know, so what is it? Well, if you take these two wings, the wisdom wing and the compassion wing, he's doing the compassion wing. He's brilliant at it. It seems fairly evident, and the world would agree, unless you're a Chinese communist, which in case you hate him. So then this is what the wisdom wing means. Now, it really struck me when we had this conversation, and each person in this little panel was agreeing, if you're out there helping people, you've got to take time for yourself. And what we mean by that is you've got to relax, you've got to calm down, you've got to de-stress, you've got to have a good meal, you've got to have a good sleep, then you're back and perky again, and then you go out there and help. But that's not the case here. It's something fundamentally and profoundly different. And this, I've realized from the discussion yesterday, this is hard to hear. The wisdom wing is all about you. Yeah, absolutely. But what it means is, the Buddha's point, this is where it gets us to the Buddha's point. What it means is that we have to learn, the work you do on yourself isn't just having a relax and a rest. No, it's intense, heavy duty, full-on job of knowing your mind, you know, understanding your mind. You learn the Buddhist model of the mind, which is pretty distinct. And then you learn to unpack and unravel your own mind, to deconstruct all the thousands of conceptual stories there. It's not a joke to say the Buddha's a really brilliant cognitive therapist, and to really fundamentally change yourself. So the wisdom wing isn't just relaxing. It isn't just having a massage and having a good sleep. That'll help. But the Buddhist point is we have this incredible potential to be unbelievably clear, unbelievably wise, unbelievably joyful, unbelievable. So it sounds like fantasy talking like this, but that's the real work of being a Buddhist. That's the internal work. Then you are capable, and that's why for 70 years he's never given up. If you're an ordinary person, I mean, after 70 years, you would have exactly, after you've given up, of course you would have. So you've got to completely transform your own mind. So what is a normal mind? Well, as we know, Buddha talks about being in samsara, and a normal mind, you know, you don't have to be a psychopath, but you know, just a normal person, ordinary person, this is how Buddha talks, we've got attachment, we have aversion, we get distressed, we get angry, we get jealous, we have low self-esteem, we have anxiety, we have panic, we have worry, we have fears. And then we say, well, that's normal human behavior. And of course it is. So if you've got that, and you've got your compassion and love and kindness, then for sure, when you're out there all day helping people, because you've got aversion, because you have attachment, because you have low self-esteem, to whatever degree you have it, it will be exhausting to help people. You will be exhausted. You need to have a break. But so the Buddhist approach is if we work on our own mind, if we practice the teachings, if we have a practice every day, if we unpack and unravel our own mind, be our own therapist, which in Buddhist terms is a full-on job of taking responsibility for what is in your mind. But this is the crucial point. The Buddha's view is, and this is from his own experience, this nice person 2,500 years ago has found from his own experience that delusions, anger, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, whatever degree of it, and this is what's radical, this is what's hard to hear in ordinary psychology. This is certainly not how the neuroscientists talk. It sounds like science fiction. The Buddha's whole point is that stuff which drags us down and which pollutes our compassion, which limits our compassion, is not at the core of our being. This is the distinct point that Buddha says. So the wisdom wing is not just taking care of yourself, it's full on, hands-on, working on your own mind, not just looking at yourself every day and something, but actually doing a full-on job of literally, what they mean is by wisdom is literally wisdom, because the degree to which we have attachment and have fears and have depression and have jealousy and have low self-esteem, yes, normal, join the universe, but the degree that we have any of that for the Buddha is the degree to which we, one, are miserable, two, are limited in our compassion, but three, are the degree to which we are not in touch with reality. We're absorbed in our own unhappy reality. So we literally don't have wisdom. Don't make it all high and holy. Wisdom is just being clear about how things are. So the consequence of working on your mind in Buddhism, this being your own therapist one, is full on every day. This is your job. And the beneficiary of this is you. So the consequence of that work is that you become less neurotic, less jealous, less depressed, less fearful, less angry, less attached, and then more what? More content, more fulfilled, more courageous, more stable, more disciplined, more grown up, more accountable, and therefore more clear. And because you're loosening the grip of this self-centeredness, and don't take that as kind of being mean, because that's a function of all these unhappy states of mind. And because Buddha's view is so radical, he has found that this stuff is not at the core of our being. So the long-term goal for a Buddhist to fully develop the wisdom wing is that you rid your mind utterly of all of this stuff. Now, again, like I said, that's like science fiction for us in the West. We take it as a given that we've got all that stuff. And so you're just going to have a bit of a break to calm it down. And then you go and help people again. No, Buddha's view is way more outrageous, way more radical, way more incredible. We can rid the mind utterly of all the nonsense. So if we take the Dalai Lama as this example, and you talk to any Tibetan Lama worth their salt, they will all say he's done the job. He's completed the job. He's a Buddha. Now, I wouldn't know. I have no idea. I'm not clairvoyant. But, you know, he looks like a pretty good example. So it seems to me he's proof of the pudding of the development of the two wings, you know, in the most simple, practical, down-to-earth way. That it's just not possible to have that level of commitment to always be working for others, always being trying to work and help in the world, never ceasing. He's never stopping. He's got this endless number of books out there, more than 100. He's never stopping, finding ways to talk to different groups of people, to communicate. And he's always content. He's always funny. He's always joyful. And he's always clear. I mean, that's kind of unusual, you know, because he's done the wisdom wing. And that doesn't mean he goes and has a rest and has a massage. That's not what it means, take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself is getting rid of the rubbish, getting rid of the attachment, getting rid of your fears. Of course, not overnight. It's evolutionary, slow, progressive, incremental job. But this is what Buddha's suggesting we have the potential to do. And often I even saw from yesterday, the few people, one said, yes, I do meditation. That's how I take care of myself. That even as a view of meditation, it's a thing you do instead of having a bath or having a massage, you meditate. But the Buddha's view of meditation is a skill that you need to learn to use to do this real job of seeing crystal clear day by day your mind and seeing the neuroses and learning to argue with them and go against them and deconstruct them and slowly lessen them and grow the virtues, grow the clarity, grow the goodness. So it's a really hands-on dynamic job. This is the point, So the cash and passion wing is the point. But as His Holiness says, it's not enough. You need wisdom. Because the wisdom wing is what I just said before, but the clarity that comes from it is incredible. Because we can see now, like the example I always use, you've got your alcoholic brother, let's say. And yes, you have compassion for him. And yes, you have love for him. You want him to be happy. You don't want him to suffer. They're the definitions of love and compassion from the Buddha's point of view. You for sure have that. But what we don't realize is our compassion is limited, polluted by our own fears, our own dramas, our own expectations, our own attachment, our own aversion, our own anxiety. We just think that's normal. And then the brother comes home and vomits in the soup and upsets mum and dad. So we get all kind of concerned, and then we start to stick our nose in where it doesn't belong. We what is it we say in the West? We have no sense of, we have no, not barriers. What's the word we use? No. Boundaries. That's a Buddha's way of saying you've got so much attachment. It's like a mummy who's always sticking her nose in her kid's business because because no boundaries at all. That's because of attachment. Attachment wants to get what it wants. So the attachment in me sees my brother and it upsets me, because aversion, anger, is a response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. So then I get upset with my brother, and I think I upset with my brother because I've got compassion. No, you don't suffer because of compassion. You don't get upset because of compassion. Compassion, and this is why the distinct view in Buddhist psychology, that you've got the positive, useful, beneficial, productive states of mind, and you have this neurotic, I-based, fear-based, distorted states of mind. This is specific to the Buddha's analysis. And he says we can get rid of this stuff. So that's what blinds us. That's what limits our compassion. So then you stick your nose in, you tell him to go to AA, and of course you're compassionate, but your attachment doesn't like this, and so you get upset. And then we talk about him behind his back and worry about him. And we all say, oh, that's normal. Well, no, if you've really got compassion, you don't worry. And this is hard to accept, but this is the Buddha's view when we've really practiced on our mind, when we've really developed our amazing potential, So the wisdom wing is hard work. That's like the retreat mode. Full on intense working on yourself. It's like being your own therapist. We all know going to therapy is not fun. You've got to confront your own rubbish. It's difficult. It's hard. Like a friend of mine who's a Buddhist and also a therapist, and she said it's like having your hands in your own shit. It's not comfy. Having a massage and having a bath, that's nice. That's not what's been meant by taking care of yourself. The Buddhist view is taking care of yourself, is getting rid of your rubbish. Why? Because that holds you back, that drags you down, makes you miserable, and it prevents you from being useful to others. So it's pretty full on, And all of the Buddhist teachings fit into this nice little scenario, the two wings of the bird.
Thank you so much, Venerable. Thank you.
What do you think of that? How does that sound,
I
Joan?
loved every word of it.
Oh, cool. I'm very happy, Joan.
I heard the Dalai Lama speak the other night at your gathering. It was wonderful.
Oh, you did hear him? Oh, good.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. Just the Tony and everybody. It seemed like a wonderful group of
there
people.
You go. So I'm so happy. And I didn't see it, but apparently he left and then he came back again, didn't he? Yeah. Did you see that?
No, I only saw the first part. I didn't.
Oh, okay. Because apparently Charmaine, he apparently, after his talk, he walked out, then he went through the door, and then everybody saw him turn around and come back again. He spent another 20 minutes. He decided there was more to say.
I'll have to look at it, look it up. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to look it up too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. I'm very happy you saw that. That's wonderful, Joan. So come on, you people. I think you're going to ask me questions.
We have another question, Robina, in the chat box from Rosemary. She's saying, what kind of practice or mind training are helpful when people are saying bad things about us to other people?
Oh, this is a nightmare, isn't it? This is a really tough one. And this is a really tough one. And this so depends. And that's where the point is, we have to realize on this path, we've got to see where we are at. We've got to see what our capability is, And this is the point, I can always repeat this, that we don't realize that the spiritual path is incremental, the more advanced practices. So it all depends on where you're at. So if you're seriously on the bodhisattva path and you really have done the wisdom wing and you've got renunciation, you understand your own mind, you control your body, you control your speech, you live in your vows, you control your mind, you really understand attachment, you understand karma, then you are, if you're really on the compassion wing, you would take it as a practice, but that's really intense. You've got to be really advanced to do that. And sometimes you've got no choice, because if they're not going to change their mind about you, you're going to go crazy. So if you can do that, but this is a really advanced level of practice. Most of us aren't at that level. Most of us freak out, cannot cope. It's unbearable. The pain is awful. But we can see, isn't it? This is the point. If we can be reasonable, and if we can get the person to stop, we can get them to not believe those bad things, then you've succeeded, haven't you? But the tragedy is so often we can see we can't change it. We can't make the people like us. We can't make the people say good things. And the thing is, and this is where we all have really bad speech. It's so interesting. We tend to think speech doesn't matter. And one of the worst ways we harm each other is like this. We say bad things about each other behind our backs. Families do it. I mean, sometimes families break up into 3 groups. I know one family, there are 3 separate groups because they all can't shut their mouth, This is a really profound practice. We can control our mouth. Okay, that's the person who's making the trouble. But to be on the end of that trouble, it is not an easy job. I promise you, it is not easy. So it all depends on what your view is. And I don't know, because I don't know who's asking the question. But I mean, if you've got the view of karma, if you have a view about the Buddhist view of the mind, you'll understand why it's happening. And that'll help you take responsibility. That'll help you deal with it. And if you can change it, there's nothing wrong with that. But the key point is we can often see we can't change it. We can't get the other person to like us or to say good words. We just can't change things. And then we go mad. So what's the point of going mad? That's where, I mean, this sounds too intense for us because we think it's noble to bash your head against a brick wall. We think it's weak and passive to merely accept something. But if you can't change it, this is the point. If you can't change it, then why go crazy? This is where you have to work on your mind. That's the point. If you can change it, please do it, okay? No problem. But often we can't. So this is why the practice is to learn to accept. And this is where it touches on this really intense level of attachment, which we've talked about, and we'll talk about more. The ordinary attachment is attachment to cakes and attachment to food and attachment to this and that. But a subtle level of attachment, a more pervasive level of attachment, the deepest one in all of us is this, and since we're born, is this constant craving to be liked. Speaking it really simply, it's the constant yearning to be liked. We need to be liked. We're craving to be seen as a nice person. So when we hear the people are criticizing us, it is unbearable for us. So then one really powerful practice, we need to use logic to analyze. We should ask the question. This is so shocking, it's almost ridiculous. But we should ask the question, why do we crave so badly for someone else to think that I'm a nice person? We've got to think about that. It's very, very odd if we think about it. Think about that. And why is because we think we're nothing. That's the only logical reason we can crave someone else to like us. Because literally, if you are content with yourself, if you worked on yourself and you are content with who you are, our mothers told us, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. We learned. This is profound. But look how words are far more dangerous for us. And that's pointing to, in the Buddhist analysis, is this incredible bottomless pit of emotional hunger based upon not feeling you are enough. Why would you have emotional hunger? You say a person, oh, she's so needy. Think about that. Why are you needy? Because you feel like you're missing something. That's the commonest experience. That's this kind of dissatisfaction. We call it low self-esteem in our culture. And that's from practicing attachment in the past, like never satisfied. We're never satisfied. And the one we're not satisfied with mostly so often is me. So we're so fragile. And as soon as we hear that someone else doesn't like us, even a stranger looks bad at us, we have a panic attack. So the real problem isn't that someone else says bad things about us. The real problem is we don't think we are anything. And we don't think we think that. It's just so natural, you know. So it's very profound, this experience, if we can work with this. So what we're trying to say is, the Buddha's view is, everything that I am is here. My potential is right here. It's up to me to develop it. So part of that process of giving up attachment is to learn to be content with who I am. Then we think, well, if I'm content, what would cause me to want to keep getting a better person? Well, if you're studying music and you just passed grade 1, you come home and you're rejoicing to your mummy, I just passed the exam. I got grade 1. And what does she do? She throws a party for you. She praises you. You rejoice in it. You're so excited. This is wonderful. You are satisfied, but you don't just sit back and go, oh, well, why bother doing grade 2? No, you're enthusiastic now to go to the next level. So we've got to rejoice at each level. But with this addiction to low self-esteem, this addiction to being dissatisfied, which is then shown when someone else doesn't approve of us, we should analyze it to see that. Then we are devastated. So we're always, in other words, we're never content. And that's where, if you got that in a relationship, as a friend of mine recently writing, you know, she talked about this like a feeling of a hole in here, and you've got to fill it all the time. That's what attachment is, whether it's for food, money, comfort, praise, whatever it might be. It's this bottomless pit of dissatisfaction, therefore bottomless pit of neediness. So of course we always look out there to fill it up. That's why when you fall in love with somebody, think about it. You are completely in bliss. Just the person looks at you and you nearly faint with pleasure. Well, you know, I think even the sex is not the main thing. It's that somebody is looking at you with dazzling eyes and seeing an angel there. This is the most joyful experience in the universe, meaning you're being totally approved of. This is unbelievable pleasure. So then when the boyfriend starts to get bored with you, the problem isn't even that he doesn't want to have sex with you anymore. That's not the problem. It's just that he doesn't approve of you anymore. So the loss is devastating. You're not being looked at and seen. This is the real addiction. This is why we all go around seducing each other. We want to hook somebody to get them to look at us and think we're gorgeous. And it gives us all this, and it gives us so much power. This is attachment to how we're being seen. It's a sign of a really unhappy person. It's attachment. I'm a half a person. So I'm all the time wanting other people to look at me and say, you're okay. So when they say I'm not okay, or when we hear the people talk about us, we are devastated. So if you can change it, please change it. But if not, change your mind. This is how Buddha's skill. Become content in yourself. Then it literally, as our mothers tell us, it's water off a duck's back. This is like not a joke, but this is literally how we become when you grow up, when we become accountable, when we complete the wisdom wing, when we lessen the attachment and the fears and the aversion and the depression and the jealousy, and we literally become, with all these lovely phrases, we become our own person. This is a beautiful saying. We're like a half a person normally. We talk about having another half. I mean, we joke about it. It's literally true. We're just half a person. And again, that's what loneliness is. Think about that. Loneliness. Because we're talking all the time in our head, aren't we? And we always want conversations with people. So we just assume that if there's no one else to hear my thoughts, we assume then I'm worthless. I mean, it's pretty demented if you think about it, but this is how we all are, and we all take it for granted. And loneliness is one of the serious diseases of our planet, because we don't know how to, and I'm not trying to be corny. We are not our own person. We don't even know how to be our own person. We don't even know how to approve of ourselves. We don't even know how to make decisions that are based upon what we really want, because we're always trying to make other people happy in an erotic way, not in a compassionate way. Like I quoted always that an English nurse or an Australian nurse or something in London, I forget, she worked with the dying. And she wrote a book called The Greatest Regrets of the Dying, the 5 greatest regrets. So the greatest regret wasn't that you didn't walk up Mount Everest. No, the greatest regret was that I didn't follow my heart. I didn't do what I felt was the best thing. I did what I thought other people expected of me. That's this disease. So when we're approved of, we go, oh, phew, I must be okay. And this is the point. This hunger in us is the deepest of all, more than for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's for approval. We wouldn't think we've got it, but it's so subtle in there, continuously there. And it's like when we're walking down the street, when we're in a cafe, when we're with people, we're always assessing how other people are responding to us, you know? So even if you think you're a very shy person, you're a very shy person or you're a very arrogant person, same problem. Same problem. A shy person is self-conscious. They're always thinking of what other people are thinking about them. It looks very humble. It ain't humble. It's really miserable. It's self-conscious because you're worried about what people are thinking about you. An arrogant person is kind of bullying you to like them. A low self-esteem person, a shy person is nervous about what you're thinking. There's always this feeling of me and feeling of people looking at us, this sense of disconnect, you know? So when you're your own person, you are confident, you're content with who you are, but you're also aware of other people in a positive way. You're not just trying to win them over. You're not just trying to seduce them. You actually notice them and are interested in what they think because you're content in yourself. But if you're low self-esteem and miserable and attached to reputation, you're like half a person, you know, and this is join the universe. This is what Buddha calls being in samsara. So the wisdom wing is pretty intense. You can't even help a fly if you can't put yourself together, you know. If you can't have wisdom and clarity and contentment and fulfillment and less attachment and less anger and less neediness. Not possible, not possible. So anyway, that was a long answer for you. I don't know if it was helpful. Other questions?
Venerable Robina, I have 2 questions and a comment in the chat.
Yes.
I'll read this one because it relates to what you just finished talking about. There's a question from Daryl that says, is a lot of this need to be enough, inadequacy feelings, are they related to attachment?
Would you start again, please? I didn't hear it properly.
Sure. Or maybe, Daryl, did you want to ask, or I can read it? I'll read it. Okay. Or you can ask.
Go on, Daryl. Speak, sweetheart. Unmute. Press your wee button. Unmute.
I had a chat
now
box.
Good, darling.
I was basically asking if a lot of what you were just talking about, is that due to the concept or illusion of self?
That's okay. Thank you, Daryl. That's the deepest. So that, you know, all these different delusions Buddha talks about, all these different misconceptions, all these different unhappy emotions, which are described in great detail in Buddhist psychology. There are 3 main ones. If you've read anybody's read any Buddhist books, you will have heard about the 3 poisons. Okay, sounds so cute. You don't go to your therapist. Oh, I've got the 3 poisons. You know, you don't talk like that. But these are the 3 main neuroses, the 3 main delusions, the 3 mental. You know, I use the term mental illness. I mean, don't be offended by this. But if you analyze the word in Sanskrit is klesha for these problems in the mind. The word in Tibetan is equivalent of that, and the correct translation in English is the word affliction. So that's the word all the typical Buddhists would use as a translation. But I just think it's a ridiculous word. Who talks about having an affliction? Only if you're a Buddhist. So you think it's some special thing because you're a Buddhist. But it's called anger. It's called depression. It's called jealousy. It's called low self-esteem. It's called bipolar. It's called ADHD. It's called CIO and OCD, whatever we call all those things, all the labels we have in the West. They're all rooted in these 3 toxic emotions, these 3 afflictions, these 3, an affliction is a problem or an illness. And what kind of illness? A mental illness. This sounds very shocking for us. So these 3 toxic emotions, these 3 main ones Buddha describes, that are the source of all the others we have. The root one, which you pointed out, is called ignorance. And it's the most primordial mistake. It's the most subtle, the most primordial delusion in the mind, the most primordial affliction, the most primordial mental illness. And on the base, and that is the one that's related, yes, to the mistaken sense of a concrete, solid, real, intrinsic me. Exactly, Daryl. That underpins everything. But then effectively in daily life, the main voice of that neurosis is the one we've just been talking about, attachment. So attachment is this emotional hunger. You see, the one of the self, this positing of this deep instinctive sense of a concrete, solid, independent me is actually rooted in fear rooted in fear. But mostly it's like a sleeping lion. It's only when someone offends you or insults you, it wakes up and there's this powerful feeling of, I did not do that. And so then there's enormous attachment to get what that fantasy I wants. That's the main voice in daily life, and what I was just describing before, this deep attachment to being seen and heard by others, to be liked by others, to be approved of by others. Attachment is also to get sex and drugs and rock and roll and all the rest. So attachment effectively is the main problem in daily life, but it's rooted in the root one of this misconception of the self. Absolutely. And the third one is called simply aversion, but it's got a whole spectrum. The kind of, volatile aversion is anger, mild levels of aversion, and these are the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. That's irritation, annoyed, frustrated, panic, worry, anxiety, and then even depression and despair. There's this whole spectrum of aversion. So aversion is the third one, which is the response to when attachment doesn't get what it wants. Attachment's the second one, which is the main voice of this emotional hunger to get what the supposed I wants. So when we understand these three, it's quite profound. When we can, and all the other delusions are branched off from these. So the answer is yes, Daryl. Is that clear?
Yes.
Good. Thank you so much. Very clear. Good. What else? People come on.
Robina, I think that leads us nicely into Todd's question. He was asking, what is an actual practice to recognize irritation in the moment in order to prevent it from blowing up into anger?
Lots and lots and lots of practice and purification and concentration, meditation every day. That's the answer. In other words, you're asking me, what is a technique to help me play a good backhand when I'm playing Federer? Well, years and years and years of practice. I can tell you exactly how to hold the racket, but you've got years and years and years of practice to do it at the time you've got Federer on the other end of the court. So the same when, to catch your mind, it's not difficult to say these words, but to catch the mind, we've got to start where we are. And that's usually at the grossest level. And the only time we even notice what's happening in our mind now, when we start the job, is when the body's affected. So most people won't even notice annoyed, irritated, frustrated, unless you say it. Most people will notice anger because it's so volatile. Or you'll notice depression because you're inert in bed and can't get up. But they're the wheels falling off. So we tend only to notice the wheels when they're falling off. So we've got to do lots of practice and lots of concentration and lots of determination to be noticing our mind like a hawk every second. And that job gets incredibly subtle, incredibly sophisticated. We go to incredibly subtle levels of seeing our mind. So we've got to start where we are and the best we can to catch it when it arises in the mind. And that mostly takes a lot of time because we notice it only when it's loud. Does that make sense to you? So it takes much perseverance, much determination to see our mind, recognize what it is, what delusion is it, jealousy, anxiety, attachment, anger. These words are easy, but it's like, it's like you've got an overgrown garden you've never looked at for years, completely entangled. All the weeds and the roses and everything is entangled. All the weeds of the herbs, all completely entangled. You can't see one bit from another. But the other point is you don't know botany. That's how we are now. Because Buddha's botany, if you like, is quite specific. The words are simple. We all know the word anger, but his view of what it is very specific. His view of what attachment is very specific. So we need to learn Buddha's botany. So it's like we've got this entangled, overgrown green stuff, and we haven't got a clue. Everything looks the same. We can't tell the difference until they're really growing and the weeds are choking the herbs, but it's way too late. So we just have to learn Buddha's, the different components are get some concentration, practice every day, the mindfulness meditation, have the will to catch your mind and take responsibility, learn Buddha's view of the mind. I'm not joking, you've got to do that. It's quite specific. These are the tools you need. And then you do the work every day. And it's intense. I mean, the very first level, junior school practice is controlling your body and speech. Junior school is controlling your body and speech. We can be practicing for 40 years and we still can't control our speech. We still blurt out the words when we get upset. So this is extremely sophisticated level of practice to really control your speech, to really have the wisdom to shut up, to know when to say nothing. It's quite powerful. Some people are quite good at it, but most of us, we just blur out the mouth, Oh, I just said some angry words, what to do? So before we even notice the mind, that's high school, junior school first. And to do that, you got to be prepared. So you got to do lots of work. So to start doing a backhand, you got to do lots of push-ups and go on a diet and go on a good, and do lots of jogging to get yourself fit, to prime your body to know how to do a backhand. Well, here you've got to prime your mind to be ready to have enough skill to control your mouth, control your body, not to mention control your mind. That's what they mean by preliminary practices. Lots of these practices that prepare your mind, prime your mind. That's the way they say it. What else is there?
There's a comment from Priscilla. She
Good,
says,
Priscilla.
I have a comment about being watchful of one's mind regarding catastrophic illness.
That sounds like a question, not a comment.
Well, it's kind of both. Hello, Venerable.
Priscilla, talk to me, darling. Yes, talk to me.
Yes, I was in your class this past, I think it was May,
Yes.
on preparing for death.
Yes.
And I had told you that I had a cancer diagnosis at the height of the pandemic, and couldn't get the treatment that I needed.
Wow, yes.
And so I don't know if you remember that at all. And
Yeah.
you deal with many, many people, so I could understand.
So how is it? So anyway, I'm interested. What's going on now? Now it's November. What's happening?
Well, I wanted to let you know, and it does relate to what you talked about just now. I had surgery September 1st.
Yes.
Once the pandemic had quieted down, and there was room in the surgical suite. And my chart reads NED, which is no evidence of disease.
Oh, wow.
And the doctor and the tumor board agreed with the doctor and the pathology report that said all the cancer was removed.
Really? That's amazing, Priscilla. That's in September. Now it's November. How's everything?
Well, two things have happened, and they relate to what you're talking about attachment. And also about expectations of others or reactions from others. Of course, I've lost, as you said, I lost about 3/4 of my friends, some of them family, because they couldn't deal with
I know, it's incredibly
having an illness.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, we're so scared of illness and death, we can't even cope with it. We can't even talk to you like a normal person. You're this weird person in another. So it's very strange, isn't it? As Lama Zopa says, we divide the world into living people and dying people, and it's too much for our minds. Isn't that fascinating, Priscilla?
One friend exploded at me in anger, and I said, I've got cancer. Why are you angry with me?
What'd she say? What'd she say?
She couldn't stop doing that, and I had to stop speaking with her.
Amazing. My goodness.
Because in watching my mind in the relationship to potentially fatal disease, I needed to actually have this clarity to say, this person is not allowed, this one's not allowed, this one's not. I couldn't have that.
So how are you going with your mind? So how are you dealing with your attachment and your expectations? Are you dealing with it quite well? You're not having too much aversion and fear, Priscilla?
I am dealing with this. I went into surgery preparing to die.
Right.
Because that can happen.
That's right, exactly.
During, with general anesthesia and a 4-hour surgical procedure.
Exactly.
I could have died.
So how are you feeling about it now? How are you dealing with everything?
Once the anesthesia and the pain meds wore off, I immediately entered a state of profound gratitude.
That's interesting, isn't it? Wow.
That I did not with and I have been there.
Yes.
I wake up every morning with this abounding gratitude that I did not expect. I did not want to give up
No.
those parts of my body. And
Oh,
it was attachment.
but that's okay. But if you've got a happy mind about it, you're doing pretty well, honey.
Well, it's like a more aware mind, and it's
Good.
changed my medicine Buddha practice.
Amazing.
The inner mandala offering says that you give up the objects of your attachment
that's
without
right.
any sense of loss. This is
That's
from
right.
Lama Zopa's translation,
That's right. Exactly.
including your body.
That's
and
right, darling.
and when when I went to that, I said, oh my God.
That's wonderful. So when death does come, Priscilla, and it's all going to come for us, you'll be ready for it, baby. And this is exactly how Thomas Zopa says in his book. That's how you prepare for it. You recognize impermanence. You deal with that reality. And from that comes a peaceful, happy mind. It seems to me you're a good example of that. You're doing a brilliant job, darling.
I'm a work in progress, Venerable
You're a work in
Robina.
progress, honey. You're a good example. Thank you, Priscilla.
And I thank you for your input, because it made all the difference. And I followed up on your referral for writing instructions for my kids.
Wonderful, darling.
So anyway, it's the attachment to body.
I know that's the main one at the time of death. So you're learning to let go of it now. You're doing very well, Priscilla.
So my question is,
yes,
if you could clarify, is this attachment to body?
Yes.
It really is a mind concept. Is that correct?
I mean, of course, attachment is the mind, and it's this over-exaggerated importance of me and my body. Of course it is. And and also in our Western culture, it's the over-exaggerated assessment that this body is me, whereas we don't even think about the mind. So if we have the idea of reincarnation and you're a Buddhist, you don't mind the body goes, because with your mind, which you're keeping stable and doing your practice, your mind will continue. So there's a sense of contentment, But we cling so mightily to this body. And as Lama Zopa says, that's the main reason of suffering at death, this intense, fearful grasping, the fear of losing the body, losing the me. So, darling, you're doing a great job. I really admire you. Well done, Priscilla.
Lama Zopa's medicine Buddha sadhana has been life-changing for me.
I'm so happy, sweetheart. It's perfect. Well done.
And our conversations. And
there you go. I'm happy, Priscilla. Thank you.
So I'm very pleased, and I thank you very much.
Pleasure, sweetheart. Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Priscilla, thank you, darling. So who else?
I have another question.
Good, wonderful.
I have an anonymous question. This person says, I feel like I rely on feeling depressed so that I can avoid getting angry at someone else.
That's a very good point, honey. I like that. That's great. So what you've done is have aversion for yourself instead of aversion for somebody else. Well, let me tell you this to you depressed people. I don't get depressed, I promise. I get angry. So I've learned that in my life, So okay, I try to be a bit better now, a bit nicer, hopefully. But the point is, aversion is the bare bones state of mind. And then on one end of the spectrum, it's called volatile anger, shout, yell, kick. And the other end of the spectrum, it's depression, which is literally anger, but internalized, and which is why it's so much harder to see. So we all got different personalities. So I can say this one for you people who are depressed, at least you don't harm others, okay? I harm me and I harm others. You only harm you. So you're one step ahead of me, babies. So we can both learn to give up aversion so we don't have depression or anger. So it's okay. It's attachment, not getting what it wants. And this is the thing, it's so subtle. And you're absolutely right about your depression, but you've got to catch it. Now, there's something interesting. I must tell you this. This is true. I get less angry now than I used to. So many things would make me angry. I'd explode, But now, I've got a volatile personality. That's never changed. But things that made me angry don't make me angry anymore. So because attachment's so primordial in all of us, until we're highly realized we're going to have attachment, but at ever more subtle level, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle. So, and it's 1,000 times a day. And I notice this myself too. When something doesn't go right, you have this kind of slight kind of funk. That's the beginning of depression. So I can see that instead of me getting annoyed and shouting at somebody, it will go internally and it'll become slightly down, the feeling of going down slightly. So that's when we catch our mind more and more. But the thing is, because we've still got attachment, we should let the mind go down, let it go down. And then before you know it, you go up again. So we keep those ups and downs more steady and we notice them, but you let go of them. Our problem is when we start to go down, everything looks gray and depressing and you start to exaggerate the story and you make it the bigger and bigger and bigger. And before you know it, you're inert in bed. So we can catch the story, know it feels slightly down, but don't buy into it. Then next day, you're fine again. The same with the anger. If you let it pass, you hear it, you don't suppress it, You don't pretend you haven't got it, but you don't believe in it. So then when you don't believe in it, you're not putting fuel on the fire. And then these ups and downs, we're going to have these until we're highly realized, I promise, but we get better and better control over them. You allow them to go and you go with the flow, slightly up, slightly down, slightly up, slightly down, but you don't have to vomit it all out, you know, or go and kill yourself in your bed. We'll just get better and better at dealing with it. I hope that is useful. But that's a very interesting point you made. I like that. What else?
I wanted to ask, when you say that you don't believe in it, then
yes, Fernando.
It's like it's empty of an inner
No, you don't. No, that's too extreme. That's too extreme. That's too extreme. That's great if you can. I'm not saying that. That's too extreme, because each delusion, listen to this, Fernando, it's a good point. Each delusion has got its own little story. So attachment is saying something very specific. Anger is saying something very specific. Jealousy is saying something very specific. Each of these are thoughts, and each of them has got their own little kind of analysis. So the emptiness one, that's the argument to the instinctive I. But attachment, how you counteract attachment, when you see that chocolate cake and your mind gets all excited and you're anticipating the deliciousness, you stop, you argue with that story. And you think, don't believe that attachment. When you know that's the point. You be precise. You deal with each delusion precisely, and you argue with each one precisely, or you merely don't believe it. That story, the cake will not make you happy. It is not more delicious than it looks much more delicious than it really is to us, because attachment's getting all excited. You just say, don't believe in what you see. When a person looks ugly to you because they were mean to you, you say to yourself, that's just anger. Don't believe what it's saying. So you let the stories come and you let the stories go. You don't suppress them, but you don't have a conversation with them, and you don't believe them. This is profound. But you be specific. Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yeah.
Good, Fernando. What else?
I don't have any more questions in the chat, Robina.
All right. Well, there we go. Look at it. Only time gone. 10 to already. Gone like a dream. Okay. Why don't we just do a little space out meditation? Why not? For a couple of minutes. Just close your eyes. Now let's just mention the classic meditation posture. Coming from all the great yogis over the centuries, they found there's various parts about the body that make it most conducive for good meditation. So we'll just go through there's 8 sort of points. The first one is your legs. So if you can, like all the greatest yogis who spend a long time in meditation, unpacking and unraveling their minds, being the best therapists in the universe, in the depths of meditation, it's best to have your legs in full lotus position, because first of all, the subtler physical energies are aligning very nicely, but also you can sit there for weeks without toppling over. It's very practical. If you can't do that, don't worry, one leg up. If you can't do that, ordinary cross-legged. If you can't do that, sit in a chair, whatever you can do. Okay, first point, the legs. Next is your bottom. If you've got very flexible legs and you can sit in full lotus, then you just need something just propping up your coccyx. But of course, we all have to adjust to how we have to sit, because some of us, we're not so flexible, and we find the cushion that works, you know. But if you're sitting in a chair, like I am, you have your feet firmly on the ground. And you don't slump into the chair. You sit upright, okay? So sit upright. But relax your muscles. So your body is upright, but your muscles are relaxed. So the first is your legs, then your bottom. Then they talk about how your body is upright. And then the fourth one is your shoulders. But I'd add your abdomen. We squeeze our muscles. We don't like to look fat, I think. It's very instinctive. So flop your muscles. Upright body, flop your muscles, okay? Yeah, shoulders square, but relaxed. That's the body. Now the hands, classic posture for the yogis, but you can do what you want if you like. Left underneath, right on top, like this, thumbs touching, sitting in your lap. The next one is your head. Several bits about your head. Slightly tilted forward, chin tucked in. Don't thrust your head back. Slightly tilted forward. Okay. Chin tucked in. Next is your lips. Jaw relaxed. Lips apart. It sounds very odd, but lips apart slightly. Then even more odd is your tongue, the tip of your tongue resting behind the top teeth, just near your palate. And all the yogis, this is hilarious, all the yogis have found this stops you from dribbling. or having to swallow your spit all the time. These are the long time serious meditators. All this is coming from people's experience. It's practical, not holy. Your tongue behind the top teeth. Breathing through your nose. And finally, your eyes. Your eyes looking down, as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground. Again, the yogis or serious meditators have their eyes open, because when they're meditating in the day, the light comes in and keeps their mind sharp. But, we're going to do about 3 minutes here, so we're not going to have any time for that. So don't worry, just have your eyes lightly closed, looking along your nose as if you're looking at the ground. Now settle into this position now and then forget about it, because your body doesn't meditate. Your mind does. So we've got like 4 minutes, okay? So we're just going to do concentration on the mind itself. It sounds very peculiar, feels peculiar sometimes, but don't worry. So there's different, we can talk about this another time, but there's different parts of our mind. But the bit that does the looking, we say, I am looking at my mind. Yeah, sure. Which bit of you? Your mind. Which bit of your mind? Attention. You're going to pay attention to whatever pops up in your mind. That's the job for about 3 quality minutes, okay? Pay attention, stay alert. Don't try to analyze it. Don't try to have thoughts. Don't try to conjure thoughts. Don't try to discuss with them. Don't try to think they shouldn't be there. Just with attention, watching your mind like a hawk and just paying attention to each second. That's the job. 3 quality minutes. Just keep your attention alert. Just watch the thoughts. Don't space out. Okay, that's it. About 3 minutes. Good quality 3 minutes. That's all, people. Hope there's some food for thought. Been helpful for me. Thank you very much. And keep moving. If there's even 1%, 0.5% of what you heard is useful, then put it into practice. Put your money where your mouth is. And never give up on your potential. That's the key point, I tell you. Whether you're a Buddhist, a Mickey Mouseist, or a Christian, or a Muslim, I don't care. Know you've got potential. Develop the wisdom wing, less neurotic, less miserable, more kind, more wise. 1 step at a time. Okay, darlings. Much love. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.